Jet engines are certified by firing dead birds into them. The biggest bird routinely tested weighs about 4 kilograms. This animal weighed an estimated 200 kilograms with a wingspan often estimated around 10 meters. A skull longer than a human being. A skeleton built of bone that was both hollow and reinforced. The gap between what modern aviation is engineered to survive and what Quetzalcoatlus northropi actually was is not a small oversight. It is a category error. The opening image is simple. A jet engine intake on a runway at dawn. Beside it, the silhouette of a Canada goose. That silhouette represents the upper boundary of what every engine flying today was certified to ingest. Now, a second silhouette fades in next to it, over twice the height. The skull alone stretches past 2 meters. The wings folded, the body massing 200 to 250 kilograms. The goose silhouette looks like a sparrow next to it. The question this video asks is not whether Quetzalcoatlus would hunt airplanes. That is fantasy. The real question is, what would happen if the largest known flying animal simply entered the airspace of the modern world? Not to attack, just to be there. Because no system in place today was designed for it. Let me show you what the fossil record actually says about this animal, because it is stranger than the dragon you are imagining. Quetzalcoatlus northropi is an as-darchid pterosaur from the late Cretaceous pterosaur from the late Cretaceous. It was discovered in Texas in the early 1970s. The first bone was a fragment of wing. Engineer and researcher Doug Lawson found it in Big Bend National Park. The fragment was enormous. When more of the skeleton emerged, it became clear this was one of the largest flying animals ever to exist. For decades, the popular image of Quetzalcoatlus was wrong. It was drawn as a giant vulture, a master soarer, a creature that circled on thermals and plunged from the sky to seize prey. The science does not support that picture. In a reappraisal of as-darchid pterosaur functional morphology and paleoecology, researchers Darren Neisch and Mark Witten examined the actual bones, the neck vertebrae, the proportions of the wings, the length of the hind limbs, the skull structure. What they found pointed in a completely different direction. As-darchids like Quetzalcoatlus had long necks, very long necks, stiff necks, built for striking downward. Their skulls were massive, with sharp, pointed beaks, not the hooked beak of an eagle, but a long, stork-like bill. Their hind limbs were unusually long and robust. Their wings, compared to marine pterosaurs, were relatively short and broad. These were not the proportions of an oceanic soarer. These were the proportions of a ground-stalking predator. Witten and Neisch argued that Quetzalcoatlus spent most of its time on the ground, walking on all fours or on its hind limbs, its head held close to the earth, neck bent, scanning for small vertebrates and invertebrates. It was a terrestrial stalker, analogous not to an albatross, but to a giant ground hornbill or a marabou stork. Scaled up to the size of a small aircraft, it could fly. The evidence for flight is unambiguous. The bones are pneumatized, hollow, reinforced by internal struts. The wing proportions are those of a powered flyer, not a flightless walker. But the flight was not what most people imagine. Pterosaurs launched using a mechanism called the quad launch. They planted all 4 limbs. They vaulted upward using the powerful muscles of the forelimbs and hind limbs simultaneously. In an instant, the animal was airborne, clearing the ground with a force no living bird can replicate. Birds launch with their legs. Pterosaurs launched with their entire skeleton. Why does this matter? Because if Quetzalcoatlus ever entered modern airspace, it would not appear from a great height, diving like a falcon. It would arise from the ground. It would move in a flap gliding rhythm, at moderate speeds, at low to medium altitudes. It would be transiting, moving from one feeding ground to another across flat, open terrain. The kind of terrain that describes the cleared expanses of a modern airport. This is where the mismatch begins. Airport wildlife management is a sophisticated system. It has to be. Birds and aircraft share the same airspace, and the consequences of sharing it are documented every year in blood and metal. The FAA Wildlife Strike Database records thousands of strikes annually. The vast majority involve birds in the range of a few hundred grams to a few kilograms. Ducks, gulls, starlings, hawks, occasionally a goose or a pelican. The mass of these animals rarely exceeds 4 kilograms. The protocols are built around that mass range, around that silhouette, around that behavior. The FAA publishes advisory circulars on wildlife hazard management. The ICAO Airport Services Manual Part 3 outlines wildlife control and reduction standards. These documents prescribe a layered defense, habitat modification, make the airport unattractive, exclusion, fencing, netting, drainage management, deterrents, pyrotechnics, bioacoustic distress calls, trained falcons, and in some cases, lethal control. Every layer is calibrated to modern birds and mammals. Every tool in the kit assumes a body under maybe 4 kilograms, a skeleton made of delicate bones and soft tissue, a predictable response to a loud noise or a predator silhouette. Now add a 10-meter wingspan adjdarcha to that equation. The first failure point is identification. Airport wildlife teams use visual identification guides, binoculars, and increasingly, radar. Avian radar systems are tuned to detect and classify birds. They look for small, fast-moving returns. A Canada goose shows up. A gull shows up. Quetzalcoatlus, its radar cross-section would be closer to a small plane. The system would likely classify it as an equipment error or an unauthorized ultralight. No one on the ground would have seen its silhouette before. No field guide contains it. No training protocol names it. Picture the tower. A primary radar return appears, large, slow, at low altitude near the approach corridor. The controller squints at the screen. No transponder, no flight plan, no known aircraft type. Maybe a drone swarm, maybe a glitch. The controller logs it and watches. The minutes pass. Picture the wildlife management team. A call comes in. Possible large bird near runway 27 left. The team grabs binoculars. They flip through the laminated identification cards. Hawk, vulture, pelican, Canada goose. Nothing matches. The silhouette is wrong. The movement is wrong. It walks on the ground with its head held strangely low, then vaults upward with a motion that doesn't look like any takeoff they know. It doesn't behave like a bird. It doesn't behave like a bird. It doesn't behave like anything. The deterrents arrive. A pyrotechnic cracker launcher. The team fires a shell. The sound is designed to startle birds into fleeing. Modern birds are wired to flinch. Their survival depends on recognizing threats and responding instantly. Would Quetzalcoatlus even register the noise as a threat? It evolved in a world without gunfire. Without pyrotechnics, the behavior of an azdarchid towards sudden loud stimuli is unknown. It might flinch. It might ignore it. It might simply pivot its long neck toward the sound, curious, unafraid. The trained falcon is released. A peregrine dives at 1,000 kilometers per hour at a goose and triggers an evasive response. It dives at Quetzalcoatlus, and what does it encounter? A skull, over 2 meters long. A neck that can reach upward with the speed of a striking snake. A body that outweighs the falcon by roughly 200 times. The falcon does not dive. The falcon's handler sees the problem immediately and recalls the bird. The system has no second option. This is the wildlife management failure. The animal is not stopped because the system cannot classify it. The system cannot classify it because the system was built for a world where the largest flying animal weighs 4 kilograms. Quetzalcoatlus northropi is 40 to 50 times that mass. The shape of the threat is outside the catalog. And in the catalog, if you're not listed, you are invisible. Now let me walk you through what happens inside the engine. Every jet engine flying commercially today is certified under standards found in the Federal Aviation Regulations, Part 33. These standards require an engine to demonstrate that it can ingest a bird and continue to operate, or at least fail in a contained manner. The test is not abstract, it is brutally physical. A cannon, sometimes gas-powered, sometimes pneumatic, is loaded with a dead bird. The bird is a specific species at a specific weight. For medium flocking birds, the standard bird mass is up to 1.8 kilograms. For large single birds, depending on engine inlet size, the mass climbs to roughly 3.6 kilograms. The cannon fires the carcass directly into the engine at the speed it would encounter during takeoff. The engine must survive without catching fire, without disintegrating, without the failure escaping the engine casing. A contained failure is acceptable. An uncontained failure, shrapnel tearing through the nacelle, into the wing, into the fuselage, is not. This test assumes the bird is made of bird, muscle tissue, blood, hollow bones. A body designed by evolution to be light enough to fly. When a goose strikes a fan blade at high speed, it passes through as a soft mass. It destroys blades, yes. It bends the rotor, yes. But the engine's design accounts for this level of energy, the blade-off events, the imbalance, the vibrations. The containment ring is built to hold the debris inside. Now consider what enters the engine if Quetzalcoatlus northropi is ingested. The skull alone is over 2 meters long. It is not soft tissue. It is reinforced with a rigid internal structure of bone struts and a keratinous beak that fossil evidence suggests was sharp-edged and thick. The neck vertebrae are not fragile bird bones. They are robust, interlocked for vertical striking. The body is not a kilogram of goose meat. It is an estimated 200 kilograms of asdarchid, a framework of structural bone and muscle layered over a skeleton built to withstand the forces of quad-launch takeoff. The engine fan blades strike this mass at over 200 knots. The blade does not slice through. It impacts. The energy transfer is catastrophic. The first blade shatters. The second blade fractures. In a bird strike, the soft body distributes the impact. The asdarchid skull concentrates it on a single point. The rotor unbalances instantly. The engine vibrates beyond any design limit. Within a fraction of a second, the failure becomes uncontained. The front fan fragments exit the casing. They tear through the nacelle. They strike the wing leading edge. The certification test is bypassed entirely. It never anticipated a body like this. It could not have. No living flying animal has ever been built this way. The engine was not designed to fail against this animal. It was not designed. Period. Can the aircraft survive losing one engine? Modern airliners are certified to fly with an engine out. The pilots train for it. The checklists are memorized. Thrust is reduced on one side. The rudder compensates for the asymmetric force. The aircraft descends to a single-engine cruise altitude. An emergency is declared. The approach begins, but the engine ingestion is only one potential strike point. Consider the airframe. The windshield of a commercial aircraft is designed to withstand impacts from birds up to 4 kilograms. A Canada goose striking the windscreen at cruise climb speed is terrifying. The glass may crack but remain intact. Now replace the goose with the beak of Quetzalcoatlus, a keratin point reinforced by a skull designed to strike downward into prey. The impact energy is not simply a factor of mass. It is the concentration of that mass into a rigid, pointed structure. The windshield was never tested for this. Penetration is plausible. Cockpit decompression is possible. The crew's ability to fly the aircraft becomes the immediate question. Where's the strike is on the wing leading edge? The slats, the flaps, the aileron. These control surfaces are designed for smooth airflow, not impact with a 200-kilogram body traveling at a relative velocity that could exceed 150 knots. The structural load is an order of magnitude beyond any bird strike certification. The wing might hold, it might not. The flight controls might remain functional. They might jam. The outcome depends on variables no engineering study has ever tested. What if the strike is on the tail, the vertical stabilizer, the rudder? These surfaces are critical for directional control, especially during an engine-out scenario. Damage to the tail could render the aircraft unflyable even if the wings and engines remain intact. The location of the strike is everything. And the location of the strike is everything. And the location of the strike is, in this scenario, entirely random. The animal is not aiming. It is simply present. Here's something else no one considers. The animal is not trying to collide. It might avoid the aircraft. Birds do this constantly. They see the approaching shape, calculate the trajectory, and turn. Their reactions are fast, faster than human pilots. But Quetzalcoatlus was not a bird. Its neck was long and stiff. Its visual field, its cognitive processing, its evasive maneuverability, none of this is directly observable. It is inferred from fossils and comparison to living archosaurs like crocodilians and birds. One inference is that it could see well and react. Another is that its size and launch-based flight style gave it poor low-speed agility compared to a modern hawk or gull. It might see the plane too late. It might start a turn and be unable to complete it in time. This is not a dragon hunting. This is a large animal making a cross-country flight, and an airport is simply a flat, open waypoint directly in its path. The encounter is plausible. The intent is absent. The danger is a mismatch of scale. Let me show you why Quetzalcoatlus might even be there. The terrestrial stalker model places this animal in open, possibly semi-arid environments, floodplains, river margins, open scrub. The kind of landscape that, in the modern world, describes the cleared safety zones around airport runways. Airports are deliberately flat, deliberately free of tall vegetation, deliberately drained. They mimic the kind of open ground where Azdarchids might have hunted small prey. The presence of water, drainage ponds, nearby wetlands, adds further overlap. Insects, small vertebrates, amphibians. Prey items for a ground-stalking pterosaur might concentrate near these features. The airport becomes not a threat zone in the animal's perception, but a resource patch. And if it needs to move, if a seasonal shift, a drought, a pressure change triggers a transit flight, the Azdarchid quad launches from the open field. It climbs to a low cruising altitude. Modeled estimates suggest a few hundred meters, not the thousands of meters of a soaring vulture. It flaps, then glides, then flaps again. Its flight path is direct. Over ground it can visually scan. The approach corridor of an international airport cuts a straight line to that very airspace. The overlap is not contrived. It is a convergence of habitats separated by 66 million years. Now the cascading failure begins. Air traffic control sees the unidentified radar return. It is larger than a bird, smaller than a business jet. Its track is erratic by aviation standards. It makes no radio contact. The controller issues a traffic advisory to all aircraft in the vicinity. But what is the advisory? Unidentified object, possible drone. The word animal does not enter the transmission. The word pterosaur exists nowhere in the phraseology handbook. The pilots of an inbound flight hear the advisory. They look out. They see a dark shape below them. It is large. It is moving in a way that does not match any bird they have ever seen. It is not flapping rapidly. It is not soaring in a tight circle. It moves with deliberate, powerful wing beats and glides on wings that seem far too broad for the body length. The shape refuses to resolve into any known silhouette. In the cockpit, there is no checklist for an unidentifiable large flying animal. The bird strike avoidance procedure assumes the bird is small. The crew flares, the bird passes below. Or the crew climbs, the bird passes below. Or the crew climbs, the bird passes above. These assumptions break down when the bird's wingspan is 10 meters. The vertical profile is not a point, it is a wall of wing and body. The evasive maneuver might not clear it. The maneuver might actually increase the chance of contact, depending on where in the cycle the animal's wing beat happens to be. And here is the deepest failure point. Every safety system at a modern airport, from the radar to the deterrent launchers to the pilot's emergency response training, relies on rapid identification. The system works because threats are cataloged. A Canada goose is cataloged. A drone swarm is cataloged. A drone swarm is cataloged. A bird strike at this altitude, this speed, this mass is cataloged. The response time shrinks because the threat is recognized. Quetzalcoatlus northropi is not in any catalog. Every second the tower hesitates to classify the return, the aircraft closes the distance. Every second the wildlife team flips through a field guide that doesn't contain the silhouette, the animal moves closer to the runway threshold. Every second the pilots attempt to resolve the dark shape into a known quantity. The relative velocity eats up the last 100 meters of separation. The impact, when it happens, comes after a chain of non-recognition. The systems didn't fail because they were weak. They failed because they were configured for a specific set of animals, the ones alive today. The animal was never the problem. The problem was the space between what the system assumes and what the world can produce. This is the final reframe. Our entire aviation safety architecture is an invisible negative print of the animals we share the planet with. Every regulation, every certification test, every wildlife management protocol. It all traces the outline of the living creatures we know. A goose, a hawk, a pelican. Remove the goose. Insert a creature from the late Cretaceous with a skull longer than a human and a body that exceeds the design basis by 40 or 50 times. Watch the negative print become visible. Watch the assumptions reveal themselves. Watch the fragility show. The jet engine test cannon fires dead birds at a specific weight because that weight covers everything that flies today. The radar is tuned to small returns because nothing larger than a pelican crosses an approach path. The deterrents are loud noises that startle animals with the neural wiring of modern birds because that is the wiring that exists. The entire edifice is a tight fit. It works not because it is robust, but because the range of animals it must handle has remained stable for the entire history of powered flight. Add one unknown, just one, a real animal, not a monster. A real body plan, not a fantasy, and the tight fit becomes a gap. Quetzalcoatlus northropi has been extinct for 66 million years. It will never enter a modern airport. The point is not to fear it. The point is to see what its absence reveals. The question was never would it hunt airplanes. The question is whether our systems would even see it coming. The answer is no, and that answer is not about the animal. It is about us. About the silent assumptions that hold up every safety guarantee we trust. The mismatch was never between a plane and a pterosaur. It was between what we think we are protected from and what the fossil record quietly reminds us is possible. A passenger jet was never built for Quetzalcoatlus. But more than that, the entire world of aviation safety was built for a specific set of creatures. And the moment you add one that evolution retired long before the Wright brothers, the whole structure shows its seams. Wide shot. A 737 on approach at dusk. The runway lights glowing. The gear down. The engines humming. In the corner of the frame, barely visible against the darkening sky, a silhouette. A long neck. Broad wings. A shape that no living person has ever seen except in rock. It is not attacking. It is simply there. And no one on the ground knows it.